As mentioned, we have Dori Gabriel joining us, the mother of Dillon, someone who I've gotten to meet over the handful of months we met at the Elite 11, Dori, and then saw you throughout the season. Then, of course, most recently in New York City. We were there. It was, of course, like who wouldn't want to gain insight from a mom and also learn lessons from you as we've learned about your history. So thank you for taking the time early on a morning to spend time with us here at Y Option.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Totally. So what is it like to be you right now?
It's crazy. This Christmas is a little challenging. I've got neighbors showing up at my house with gifts, and I'm not prepared, which is not normal for me. But this, especially this season, it's been a little different. Um, it's been amazing, just the whole experience and following Dylan on this journey, knowing it's his final year of college football. I think we're trying to relish every moment. And we've been honoring his process, which is staying right where his feet are at. You hear him talk about that all the time. And so we haven't been thinking too far ahead, but because of that, as things unfold and the season extends, right? We've had to line up flights uh, for New York, line up clothes appropriate for the weather and for the dress code. So it's been challenging but fun all at the same time. And just when I start complaining, my twin sister will be like, "Okay, stop. People would love to be in your shoes." So we're grateful for the whole experience.
Totally. And you're going to be able to, have a front row seat at the Rose Bowl, which I'll be there as well. It is to me the most glorious element in all of sport.
Mm.
I'm curious from your lens because I grew up in Pennsylvania, so you often hear about the East Coast watching the Rose Bowl
Yeah.
when it's freezing, but you don't often hear about like Hawaii watching the Rose Bowl. What does that game, that stadium mean to you and your community when you know that you'll be there in a matter of weeks?
So we've always talked about, and especially within the past year, that if everything goes right, we won't be spending the new year in Hawaii. And I cannot tell you, I don't believe I have. I haven't spent any New Year's away from Hawaii, and that's a big deal, like not being here. So everything went well. We're flying to LA. We're gonna be at the Rose Bowl. Um, it's exciting. I love that it's gonna be warm. I love that he'll be feeling more in his element with the warm weather. I watched some of the games this weekend. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. Indy was cold, but we had the dome, right? Probably the coldest game we played in was, I would say, UW at home in Autzen. So I think with the time difference, it makes it easier for people to watch because normally you have to get up at the crack of dawn to watch a game here in Hawaii. But our first experience was this game at UCLA, and that was so much fun. So I love that I'm familiar with the Rose Bowl. I'm a fan of the whole experience. Parking on the lawn, which somebody told me was it a golf course before? I don't know what it was, but I love it. So I feel like the warm weather will be in our favor. And I'm excited to see the parade. And the Gabriel clan and friends will be 40 strong. So we're excited.
I love that. Well, the Roth clan will be six strong, so we'll try to
Okay.
find each other when we're there. Yeah, it's always tradition. I always bring my two boys to the Rose Bowl every year. It's just one of those memories that will hopefully be a core one for
Yes.
them. But I want to ask about you because I'm a parent. A
Mhm.
lot of parents listen to this, and I was just talking to a bunch of quarterbacks that were in junior high over the weekend. We have
Mhm.
an Elite 11 Academy, which is kind of sixth through ninth grade, and I was telling them the story of your son
Yeah.
about what mattered most to him when he
Mhm.
was going through his process. And it seemed to be playing
Yeah.
versus the biggest school, the biggest place, but it was really just doing what he loved.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, if you wind it all the way back,
Yeah.
what values were non-negotiable with you and your husband that all of your children and Dylan specifically were going to embody just to operate within the environment that you created for them?
You know, it was always about their passion and loving this game. And fortunately, being a boy mom with three different boys, each of them have a different sport, which I'm kind of excited about because no one was in anyone's shadow. Of course, Dylan is more in his dad's shadow, being a quarterback, son of a quarterback. But we just wanted them to thrive and recognize good people. And I feel like that's Dylan's story and that's his experiences, picking people over other things. And I say that because he's such an investor. He loves this game so much that he wants to be doing it with people he loves. And that's not to say that he's been places where he hasn't loved it. He creates that environment. And I think you've had opportunities to meet him and see that. But it's amazing to step back and still have connections with all the people along the way. Different quarterback moms, Mikey Keeney's mom, you know, Jackson Arnold's mom, Mackenzie Milton's mom, still reaching out because we all understand the level of investment that we've had in their dreams. But it's so worth it when they find their love and their passion. It could be for anything, not just sports, it could be for music or art, that you just put them in a place where they feel valued and loved and they can thrive. And I feel like they've been the benefactors of that. And then we've been able to be the benefactors of all these wonderful people along the way.
There's a phrase that we love in the quarterback space, which is like, tell me about your kitchen table.
Mm.
Because to your point, Jackson Arnold grew up differently than you guys did, or Mackenzie did, or any of these young individuals did in their families. We read an article about you a couple of years ago that talked about your kitchen table. Can you share with us the environment as mom that you try to create, knowing that you just referenced, like, your husband wasn't just a good player, like he was an elite player at the same position that your son is an elite player at in
Yeah.
Dillon. What was it like if we were a fly on the wall as you were making your coffee, or as you all were having dinner at night as Dillon was growing up?
Well, I grew up in a household where we always sat down to dinner. I don't care how late it was. And even if you weren't hungry, you sat at the table and we talked. And I think the kitchen table was the safe zone. And my husband talked about how he always would leave football at the door as soon as they walked in. And I kept it non-football. We talked about what happened at school. We talked about maybe the people that we interacted with that day. And I feel like that's been consistent even now. And now that the moments are fewer and far between with us, all of us at the table, like, we cherish those moments and we talk about the funny times around the kitchen table. And it's still the same kitchen table we've had forever. It's a little beaten up from just a rough household of boys, and who knows what's been on that table. But we still, even when we visit him in Eugene, his big thing is breakfast. So he'll be like, Mom, pick up breakfast and let's all just kind of be around the table. So it's a connector. It's a way that we all sit down and we all get to share and we all get to talk about what life's been dealing us right at that moment. And so I love it. I cherish it. Now it's just my husband and I and Dillon's younger brother, Roman. My other son is in Oklahoma. So it's kind of hard to have those moments, but the kitchen table is the safe zone. The kitchen table is the connector. And it's always a reminder of the importance of family. That's what it's been for us.
What has it been for you all when life has been a challenge, when adversity has showed up? Because, we're in a world where, like, you know, it's easy to maybe avoid that. And
Yeah.
I know you all haven't. And I'd be curious if you could offer some guidance to those who are trying to help guide their sons as well, of when adversity shows up, especially at this position that is oversaturated at times with praise, but also can feel lonely within a snap.
Back when he was in high school and had challenging games or moments or injury even, we talked about being grateful for the blessings, but also being grateful for the lessons. So we look at them both the same and we receive them both the same, because in those challenges, during those times of adversity, it's a lesson for later and we don't realize it. And I'll give you a good example. When he was at UCF and that third game in Louisville and he fractured his collarbone, that was a tough time. He had big moments. He felt like that was going to be a big year for them. And it was hard for him to take a pause during that time of injury, not be doing the things he loved. I could see a turn in his spirit. And then we talked about how, for whatever reason, God's plan was for him to take a break at that moment, whether he wanted to or not. And the blessing now, years later, is he had this extra year of eligibility, and look where we are. So sometimes in the moment, we don't understand it, but I feel like we have to explain to our children the importance of receiving both. There's a reason. And if you miss the lesson, you miss the blessing later on. So it's always been blessings and lessons. Same grateful heart for both.
Wow. When you were told that he was thinking about going to Oregon, when you guys sat down and you had that conversation, whether it was over a FaceTime or hopefully over a breakfast or over a meal. How did that land on you? And I'm curious, I'm sure you knew of Marcus, right?
Yeah.
And his legacy there, but I'm curious as a parent when he said, "Hey, I'm thinking about going to that place in Eugene, Oregon."
Yeah.
What was the response?
You know, of course, as a mom, I'm thinking logistics. You're going to move again. Like, I was more worried about how are we going to get you from A to B. I wasn't thinking X's and O's. I wasn't thinking about the work or challenge ahead. But when I could see in his heart and in his face that he just needed support again, and my husband and I talked about it. I said, "All right, you're going to enter the portal. Let's go. Let's go find you a new spot." And when Oregon came calling, and the familiarity we had with Dan Lanning and meeting him in Georgia many years ago, it was so comfortable. Dan has a way. Coach Dan has a way of just connecting, and from the moment we had that first phone conversation, it felt like it was the place he needed to be. Now add on the fact that Marcus has history there, and we have another island boy who understands what other island boys are looking for. His mom and I have become good friends, and she was just like excited. And of course, the coconut wireless goes around, and she's texting me, "A little birdie tells me you're going to be visiting Eugene." And so she was so excited for us, and she just said it is a place that Marcus calls home, enough that he bought a home there. And she said, "I know you're going to enjoy it there and love it for him." And we have. As much as it's been his shortest stint, it's been his greatest sense and place of home. And that I've been excited for him with that. So much so that when I go there, I feel at home. That's how much he's entrenched himself there.
Yeah, I can hear my parents, specifically my mom, saying like the thing she misses the most is pregame, in the game, and postgame with the parents,
Yep.
like the bond. And you referenced you guys haven't been in Oregon for 6 years, you've been in college football for 6 years.
Yep.
What have the other families done to you as someone that prioritizes family at such a high level?
Well, the other families have been just such a great sense of support. Um, they have become an important part of our pregame, whether it be phone calls from parents and families or texts, and then the new families we meet along the way. It's been amazing. The Fergusons, meeting the Nixes. It's been such a great journey. Uyangalales, just it's so funny how um, while football connects us, the bond is deeper because we have this love and deep appreciation for the journey. And we're all taking this journey together. And that's what's so neat is what happens next level. I get to watch all these nephews that I've met along the way. And I have many teams on Saturday and now Sunday to watch. It's so cool.
Yeah, I can only imagine the text threads that you're going to be on from like Orlando to Norman to
I
to
know.
Eugene. Who knows? You have a degree in communications and media studies. When
Yep.
we went back and researched you, how, I mean, Dylan is one of the best communicators that I've seen in my career. Have you talked to him about that? Is just something naturally that he gleaned from you, or are you like Professor Dory as well?
No, that's so funny you say that because early on we were so hypercritical. We'd be like, "Dylan, be careful not to use words you don't understand." And I would always get nervous and watch, but I think what has happened is he just knows who he is. He's 6 years in now. He knows what he's about. He's not afraid of questions. I think before he was for not having the right answer. But I think what he's realized is it's not about having the right answer, it's about telling your story. And so he's found his most authentic self in this place and in this time of his life at 23. He'll be 24 soon. His birthday's soon. Um, it's so exciting to watch him not be nervous and field questions and really be decisive about where he's at this point in his life right now. So I don't think it's come from any media practice. I think we've given him a lot of grief about it, but he just knows who he is, and so he can speak from his heart and from his soul.
Yeah, I've noticed that since the first interview I did with him when you and I first met over the summer,
Yeah.
and the countless ones we've done since then. He is just a way about him.
Mhm.
Surprise for you when he showed up and his way was to get a van instead of something a little more fancy when he got to Eugene?
He FaceTimed me and I thought he was in a rental. He's like, "I picked up my car," and I said, "You're in a van." He's like, "Yeah." I wanted a van. I said, you did? We never really talked about it. He's always been very practical. I would have expected him maybe to get something, maybe an SUV or something. But he's like, Mom, it makes sense. Plus, I save money on insurance, which is so Dillon to be very practical that way. And so we rode in that van ever since. And he's proud that it has monitors behind it. The other players give him grief for his playlist. It's so funny. I'm not
Yeah.
surprised.
I love that. We wrote in it as well before the Idaho game. He took our crew around for a little segment that you could check out on our YouTube channel in
I think
time.
I saw
Uh,
it. Yes.
that's awesome. It's so rare that we get a parent to come on this show. We're so grateful for that. And it's so rare that that parent also gets to experience what I think is the most unique experience in sport, which is going to the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah.
I went back in the day when Reggie Bush won it, when I was
Mm,
coaching at USC.
yeah.
I was there when Marcus won it, when others lost it. Was there this past weekend where we saw one another. What is it like through the lens of a parent to watch your son be up on that stage?
I think we had always hoped, I know as he put his body of work together this season, that it would be close. And again, staying in the moment with Dillon and being ever present, we waited until that Monday after our big championship weekend to hear the names of finalists. And I was just so relieved because I feel like his body of work sometimes has been underestimated because of his size, 3-star from Hawaii. Like we could play it back, but I feel like that's driven him to prove to himself, not to others, that he's worthy of this journey. But as a parent, to be there in New York with other amazing players, Travis Hunter, Aston Genty, and Cam Ward, it was a complete honor. But what caught me by surprise was sitting down at breakfast with Mike Garrett, who is my husband's namesake. My husband Garrett was named after Mike Garrett. Meeting, oh gosh, Tim Tebow, meeting Holly Rowe, like, and just hearing them wanting to meet and see who we were because we're Dillon's parents, and then watching him interact with everyone was just such an amazing moment. The who's who of football was in New York this weekend, right? And he got to be a part of it, and we got to see him be with others who love this game so much. It was such an honor. So by the time the ceremony came, we already won from the experience and the trip to New York City, which has just been during Christmas time such a blessing.
Yeah, well, no surprise you had your degree in media studies because you guys were both phenomenal on stage. You referenced your husband's namesake. I think it's a story that nobody knows on how you named your children. Would you mind sharing that?
Yeah, not at all. So I know my mother-in-law named, my husband after football players, so we kind of followed suit. So our oldest son was named Garrison after Garrison Hurst. And then Dillon was named after Corey Dillon, which is funny because they were running backs. But when our youngest son was born, we were kicking around names. And at the time, I'm a basketball fan too. So Riley, Pat Riley. But for whatever reason, when he was born, I saw his face and his strength. And so I said, I love the name Roman. Let's name him Roman Gabriel. So the common theme is football. And the other common theme is that their names all end with an N. I wanted that to kind of go through. And so, here we are with our football gang, if you will, of names.
I love that. Okay, before we cut you loose, and we know you have a busy day, appreciate you spending time all the way from Mililani
Yeah.
to here. When you think of the journey that you have been on,
Hmm.
and then you know that a parent's job at times is to try to stay. I can remember my father telling me this before I became a dad. Like, just stay a half a step ahead of them. Just
Yeah.
try to stay a half a step ahead of them. And in this recruiting world, in this transfer world, it can be hard. And I see a lot of times, at times, parents trying to help, but sometimes harming, sometimes stepping
Mhm.
on opportunities that might have been the best ones for their children. And I've ton of empathy. Like, there's no blueprint to do
Yeah.
this. What might you say to parents that are kind of going through it right now, whether it's high school, should we, or junior high, should we hold our kid back? If it's
Yeah.
high school, he hasn't played yet, should he transfer? You guys changed high schools.
Hmm.
Should he in college change again, even though there's another quarterback in the room? What might you advise to those that are on this path and looking for outlets like yourself
Yeah.
to help guide them into the unknown?
I think my biggest advice is to really listen and watch your, your child, because sometimes we want to make decisions for them, but ultimately they will need to have ownership of that decision, whether it be to stay, whether it be to go, whatever that decision might be. And the other thing I think as a mom, you say staying a step ahead, and a lot of it I've realized now, only now, is that comes from love and wanting to protect their heart for disappointment. And I think what I've learned is disappointment is going to happen. And what you have to do is lean in but also back off, because there's so much learning in that process of disappointment, because they start to figure out who they are, how much they love this game, and they start to problem solve. But if you try to clear the space for them too much, they don't trust their instinct. And that's what's so important, is for them to build instinct, to recognize good people, to trust the decisions they make. And I've also learned that, and Dillon says this, and I love it, winning is hard. It's not easy. Life is hard. And I think the sooner we come to the realization that that's the way it's going to be, that they figure life out. And so we become benefactors of that learning, and then see them thrive. And that's ultimately the goal, is just for them to be able to exercise that muscle of learning and instinct and be able to make good decisions. And ultimately they do. They do.
Yeah. So good. So good. Lean in, back off,
Yep.
and you could learn a lot. That was incredible. As was this conversation. Can't wait to find you in the Rose Bowl, give you a
Yes,
big
please
hug,
do. I want
introduce
to
you to
meet
my
your
wife and
kids.
kids.
Yes.
Yes, done and done. They'll be there.
I will text you our location at tailgate. I promise.
I love it, and they'll be in all green. Just if
Okay.
anybody's curious, we know
Thank
it's a
you.
Big Ten game, but they'll lean towards Oregon way. And what a classic game that we have on New Year's Day. Dori, the professor, the athlete, the mom, the wife. Thank you so much for sharing your heart with us today.
My pleasure. I was excited to be asked, and just really enjoy learning and meeting people like you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
There
you.
it is, Dori Gabriel.
Aloha.